Hello everyone, Exilium here, and so the next unit for Girls Frontline 2 Exilium that we'll be taking a look at is Sabrina. She is another one of the units that will be on the standard banner like Ju, and she is kind of the first case where you're going to start to see how some of these synergies can start to form amongst characters. I think she'll be a good one that can be picked up to work alongside her and triggering Ju's follow-up or basically Overwatch type attack. So Sabrina here is a bulwark class, and she uses the weapon of shotgun. And so when we take a look down here, we'll go first and take a look at her passive at the bottom. Right, on her passive, a flexible modification, the range is 7 for it. It's a targeted ability. And so it's before an ally unit is attacked, if they're within 7 tiles of Sabrina, it'll apply 1 stack of shelter to that ally. And so shelter is basically a defense buff that prevents stability damage to your units. And so if you remember, stability damage is a damage when your unit's under cover. Once you take enough damage and you go down to 0, it's going to break your break it in the sense that you'll lose a good chunk of that damage reduction that you get from being undercover. And so this is a way to prevent that from happening. This can be triggered up to 4 times per turn. Sabrina gains 1 point of Convectance Index for each instance of damage she deals. And after using a skill to attack, she'll generate Tideway within that area. If there already is Hydro tiles present in that area, a tile reaction is triggered, removing the tile and dealing a fixed damage equal to 20% of attack to the enemy target on tile. And so first thing we'll kind of look here is we have that. You're just kind of building up your points going towards your ultimate with that Convectance one, then hers, which actually requires 5. And then so after she uses any of her skills to attack, so we have her 2 skills up here. That's where she's going to generate Tideway. And so if you read here, Tideway applies damp to units within, which ends their movement in this area for 2 turns. Enemy units in this area gain a weakness to Hydro damage and Hydro tiles. So basically it'll put that down. Now and then what damp does is it reduces their healing by 40% after reaching 2 stacks. It is converted to congestion for 2 turns, maximum of 2 stacks. This is considered a Hydro debuff. And so they have damp, and then congestion is just cannot receive healing. It's a turbo debuff. And so this is basically as you're attacking. So this is going to take more place on enemies that you're not going to be able to one-shot, where first you're kind of getting Tideway on them. If there's Hydro on it, then you're going to do that additional damage when you remove the Hydro tile. If you have damp on them and then you get 2 stacks to it, then it's going to trigger that congestion, which then makes it where they can't be healed. So first, the healing's reduced. Second time, now they can't be healed at all. So I can see that being very useful for tankier units, and it'll prevent them from being able to be healed up. And so you can slowly whittle them down using her. And then you also have kind of that slowing their movement down, because that's a lot what you're going to see in her kit. Is a lot of hers is kind of controlling the enemy so they can't move around as much. Because her basic element is dealing with that Hydro element. Alright, so we go up to her basic skill here up the top. This one has a range of 6. It does a stability damage of 4. And so this one selects one enemy target within 6 tiles and deals physical damage equal to 80% of the attack to them. So nothing crazy with this, just your standard basic attack. Now comparing this to Ju, this actually has a higher stability damage to it. I mean, that probably because she's using a shotgun, lower range, but it has higher stability damage. So that's good for having her up close. So when someone's undercover, she can try and knock them out of it. So their damage reduction is reduced much quicker. Now, when we look at her first active skill here, Delicious Feast, on AoE debuff stability regain, Hydro skill. This one has a range of 6. It has an AoE of 2, so it's going to have a range of 2 on it. This one has a cooldown of 2 turns, and it deals a stability damage of 3. And so with this one, you select one enemy target within 6 tiles to attack, dealing AoE Hydro damage equal to 80% of her attack to them, and all enemies within 2 tiles, applying movement reduction 2 for 2 turns, and requires 2 points of stability for each target hit. And this has that movement reduction 2, movement is reduced by 2 tiles. And so that's what you're going to see with a lot of her kit with the Hydro is she's going to slow enemy movement down. And as you know, sort of Kalam Valaria, how useful that can be in controlling the battlefield when the enemies can't move at all. And it's even nice that it is also going to recover your 2 points of stability. So it's going to make her more tankier. I mean, that kind of comes along with her class. If you notice up here on the top, Bulwark, she's more of a tankier unit. So that's when she's undercover, she's going to do her shots, and then if she is taking hits, she's going to be keep putting up her stability with something like this skill, making it much harder for them to remove her damage reduction from that cover. And from there, we'll go to her next active skill here, Meal Preparation. This one's an AoE debuff cover destruction. And so this one has a range of 1, cooldown of 2, stability damage of 2. So this one is select one direction and deal AoE hydro damage equal to 70% of her attack to all enemies within a 3x6 area in a selected direction, and applies move it 2 down for 2 turns. And it destroys any destructible cover outside of a 3x3 area by itself. So this one's going to be a great way to just completely remove their cover. So not only are you, it's doing minimal stability damage, but if the cover that they're currently utilizing is destructible, it will destroy it and completely remove their cover. And as you already know, how this can really work well with our other unit over here, which was Quang that we've already kind of discussed, is that she does extra damage when they're not under cover. And so with this one, not only is it going to break the cover, it's going to do that damage. And then when Quang does her follow-up, you can see that she's going to hit them and they're not going to be undercover anymore. So it's going to do a significantly increased damage. So that's kind of seeing how you're having some synergy start to form around these units. And so Sabrina is going to be one of those first units that you're going to want to get to synergize with her. So great skill right there, because cover is gives big damage reduction. So you definitely want to be able to destroy it. And so the final skill here, her ultimate skill, Gourmet Split, is a buff defense counterattack. So when she casts this one, it's a buff on self, but this one applies 2 stacks of shelter to all allied targets. So everybody on the field is going to get shelter. And then she gets Feeling Full for 3 turns. And what Feeling Full is an attack is increased by 15% of the unit's own defense. And then it expands the passive effect to the entire map. This buff cannot be cleansed, so it's a nice little buff to your entire team with Feeling Full. And then if an enemy target within range deals targeted damage to an allied unit, so any of your allies, she will use counterattack against it. And counterattack is just performing an attack that it just basically goes and does her normal attack against them, and it cannot be triggered by return fire, counterattack, or assists. That's kind of key down here, that it can't be triggered by this, because when you kind of think of those synergies with Quang, you know Quang has in that kind of Overwatch state. If any of your allies does damage to somebody, she'll attack alongside them after their attack. If it didn't have this kind of comment down here, you could see a ping pong back and forth where she counterattacks, Quang attacks, she counterattacks, and then they can just do all 3 of their 3 times per turn in one single hit from an enemy. And so that's why they got this kind of little staple down here, so you can't just do 6 attacks in one little to go. But it does show, this is kind of starting to show where you're looking for your synergies, because Sabrina is the other unit, like I've said, in the standard banner that I want to get to use along Quang, and this counterattack is one of the main reasons why, because it's basically a double hit counterattack, because if an ally gets hit, she counterattacks, and then Quang follows up her with her own attack. And so that is all of her skills. Now, the first thing we'll want to take a look at after that is, I kind of got to take a look at them, but are the dupes, the Fortification segments. And these are going to be very important on Sabrina, because when you actually look at the review for her, one of her big pros is that she can be farmed long term, as her dupe tokens can be acquired from the weekly boss battle. So she's one that you can get the dupes without actually having to pull her. You can get her from farming. So over time, you are going to get these dupes. So this is going to be, you're definitely going to want to think about these, because these are going to be huge on increasing her capabilities, especially if you're going to do like me and be maxing out Quang. So the first one here is Fortification Segment 1, so the first dupe, increases the number of times shelter can be applied by 2. So if you look at this, it was triggered up to 4 times per turn. That just basically makes it where you can do it 6 times per turn. So then we have the second one that falls under, where is the second one here? Oh, second one's under the Meal Preparation skill. Damage multiplier increased by 10%. So second one's nothing too crazy, just a little bit increased in damage. Then we have the third one, which is under Delicious Feast. If only one target is hit, it'll restore 6 points of stability index. And so this was her big AoE skill. If she's only hitting one enemy with that attack, it just means she's getting even more stability with this Fortification segment. So you can utilize this as being an AoE type attack, Or if you're wanting to recover a lot of stability for her, you can just make sure it only hits one enemy. And with this dupe, you are getting a big increase to her stability index. And then when we go to the fourth dupe, and fourth and fifth, they're both under the ultimate. The fourth one increases attack of feeling full by 10%, increases stability damage of counterattack by 2 points. So just increasing that to where she's doing a lot more stability damage to the enemy, as well as the increase into the attack damage of feeling full. Then we have the fifth one here, no longer consumes Confectance Index, gain an extra command once. So you're no longer going to be using those when you're utilizing the skill, so it's going to be a lot easier to pull this off without having to get that full 5 Confectance Index. And then the final sixth one, that one is under the passive skill here, and that is when Confectance is full, additionally consume 4 points of Confectance Index to increase skill damage by 30%. And so that kind of comes right after the fifth one. Since you're no longer having to use them for your ultimate, you're now able to consume them to increase skill damage by 30%. So that's another big increase to her damage right there. All right, so the last thing we'll take a look here is the neural helix, or basically the parts that you can kind of slowly grind out for them as you level them. So this first one here is Eating is a Blessing. When under attack, defense is increased by 20%. So just a nice defense increase. Delicious Sharing. Gains 3 points in Confectance Index at the start of battle. Just like the other unit, it's going to make it a lot easier to use your ultimate quite quickly right off the bat. Then you have Let Everything Simmer. While on Hydro Tiles, defense is increased by 30%, gaining immunity from displacement effects from enemy units and all abnormal Hydro terrain effects. So, I mean, she's a Hydro unit, so that's a good one there. Eat Well, Sleep Well. So when Confectance Index is not full, recovers 2 points of stability index for each point of Confectance Index gained. So just, she's being a tank, giving her more stability. So as when she's undercover, it's going to be very, very hard to break her stability. So she's going to be getting that massive defense reduction or damage reduction there, because it's going to be pretty much impossible to break her out of cover. Calorie Overload. The effective range of Delicious Feast changes to 1 tile. The skill targets tiles instead of units and pulls all the enemies 1 tile towards the center. Damage dealt is increased to 100% at attack. So this one kind of just changes her active skill here from the AoE. It's only got a range of 1, but it's going to pull the targets towards it. So a nice little upgrade there. And I'm going to believe this is you can turn on and off on these. So if you don't want to change it to 1 tile, I believe you can make it where it keeps its own range. It's not like once you get this upgrade, it's stuck to that. It's just another way that you can utilize the skill. And then you have Weird Tasting Health Recipe. The active skill Meal Preparation is modified to affect 5 tiles around self and no longer applies movement down 2. It now applies Taunt up to 2 unit targets for 1 turn. The cooldown is increased for 2 turns. So another little buff there. And so I think these are things where they're on and off. I didn't mention another unit. These aren't you upgrade them and they're permanent. So like these ones, you can either have it on or off in that capacity on changing these skills. And then the last part down here is Shared Hot Oil Production. When dealing targeted damage, applies movement down 2 to the target for 1 turn. And so that kind of pretty much sums up her entire kit. Another really good unit. It's one thing I'm liking with Girls Frontline 2 so far is that all of the starting units are already looking really good. You can kind of look at her review here that they have on Pridewin of her pros and cons. Pro is she has 2 good AoE skills with a good amount of damage that can be dealt, as well as slowing down the enemies. And like we know, it's all the people that will play Sword of Kandlari with me, how useful those slowing capabilities are. Because if the enemies can't move, you can usually control where you can do damage and then move out of their range, or it might be harder for them to do damage to you. So just being able to slow them down gives you a lot more control over the field itself. And then you can destroy any destructible cover easily, and it is not impeded by cover. And so, like I've already said, I mean, we have Quanju, which does extra damage to someone that's undercover. If they're undercover that's destroyable, she can destroy it, and then Quanju is just going to follow up and deal a lot more damage to them since they no longer have the cover. So that's going to be very useful there as well. Can self-heal her stability index with no need of any support. So she's basically building up her stability. When she's undercover, she's not going to probably have that cover blown through the stability because she's just going to be constantly bringing it up on her own. synergizes well with Tololo, which is another standard unit. I haven't gone over her yet, but it's already showing that she synergizes with Queenju in one way. She's also going to synergize with Tololo, so I'll probably cover her next so I can kind of discuss some of her synergies with her. I haven't looked at her kit yet, but it looks like she's also got synergies with her. And her passive allows her to apply a Hydro element debuff to a target. Oh, well, it's already saying it right here. So they can put that Hydra on the target, allowing Tololo to exploit phase weakness as well as providing her permanent critical rate and critical damage permanent boost stacks. So Tololo looks like she wants that Hydro stuff out there to get all of her buffs. So that you might be already starting to see one kind of team come together here with Tololo, Queenju, and Sabrina. Her counterattack can deal 4 stability damage, and her self buff increases her damage based on her defense. I mean, the counterattack's huge to me. That's a big part of her kit for some of her synergy. And then she can be farmed long term as her dupe tokens can be acquired. And that one's a big one because some of them you have to get through dupes through polling. You can actually get all of her dupes through farming them in the game. And now, I mean, that's kind of a con here because she is dupe reliant on getting a Fortification Segment 5 is highly recommended, which you'll need 5 dupes for. This makes it so she can use her ultimate skill and attack, increasing her flexibility as a hybrid DPS/tank, and her best neural helix key is unlocked at level 60, so you're going to really need to max her out before you get her full capabilities. But when it comes to these games, I mean, I'm looking at it long term. I don't care about units in their beginning game capabilities because usually in the beginning of the game's easy enough that you can pretty much use anybody anyway. And so I'm thinking end game. And so that, to me, these are not really cons since getting the dupes is able to be done pretty easily. As well as the neural helix key. So no problems there. But that is Sabrina, another great unit, one that I will be happy to get if she's my first one that I get out of the standards. Like I said, I will be using my first, if I don't get her, Queenju will be the first one I'll be targeting, simply because she is the top tier single target damage dealer of the group, especially in the beginning. And the Sabrina is just going to be a great assist to her. So Sabrina will probably be something that I'll probably get as a second one. We'll kind of see. I haven't gone through every single one of the standard units yet to know the order that I want to kind of acquire them. But definitely a great unit because it gives you control of that field. And with the counterattacks, just going to be great overall for the team. But yeah, that kind of covers it. If you like my content, if you could like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps. And thanks for watching.